Throughout World War II, there were many different men and women who worked inside of the concentration camps, and they were known for their brutality and evil. Buchenwald was one of the toughest and most brutal camps, and the former commander of this site was even executed by the SS for his actions, as he was stealing money and embezzling funds from the hierarchy of the Third Reich. But one man who worked inside of the camp was known as the Hangman, and some of his crimes were ruthless and brutal, and he was even known for crucifying a couple of priests inside of the forest around the camp. Within Buchenwald there were many acts of execution and torture carried out every single day. It was inside of a secret neck-shooting facility where around 8,000 Soviet prisoners of war were led inside, believing they would get a medical examination. However, inside, behind them, an executioner with his pistol fired a single shot into their neck. Some of these people were not even recorded on the camp's records, meaning they became lost victims. But one man who worked at the camp and who was known for his brutality and evil was Walter Gerard Martin Sommer, and he was someone who even the SS believed went too far in his treatment and punishment of prisoners within the camp. He was born on the 8th of February 1915, and he joined the SS in his early adult years. Sommer was one of the most brutal guards of the concentration camp system, and he trained at Dachau, the earliest camp, before he was schooled in how to be a beast and someone who could instigate a brutal terror campaign against inmates. In 1943, Martin Sommer was linked to many crimes, including cruelty and corruption, and the head of the SS, Heinrich Himmler, had himself investigated regarding his work inside of Buchenwald. It was found that he had a secret compartment in the floor of his office where he kept torture instruments and weapons, and within a chamber he also had needles to slaughter and kill prisoners by injecting them with carbolic acid to the heart once his torture campaign had been done. He was a senior member of the SS, and an SS judge also discovered that Sommer had hidden bodies of his victims under his bed before the next morning, and he then took them to the camp's crematoria to be buried. What is shocking is that this information came out under the investigations of the SS themselves, and this was not an Allied investigation. These were Sommer's employers looking into his actions. Further investigations showed that he was accused of whipping prisoners to death at the whipping post inside of camp. 25 lashes of the whip were said to have been fatal, but Sommer was discovered to have been given 60 lashes to one man and 35 more than he was sentenced to, and that the man was murdered by these actions. He later stated at his trial that, "I can't say to have hit the last strokes as hard as the first. You always get a little tired." One of the biggest groups inside of the camp where he worked that were targeted were priests who were locked up inside of the camp. Sommer launched a campaign of terror against these men, and during one incident he was seen beating a priest very badly, and then he hanged him in front of the others. He also threw cold water on the man whilst he was crumpled in a heap on the floor, and he also left prisoners out in the cold winter to freeze to their deaths. But there were 2 priests who, at the hands of Sommer, were subjected to possibly 2 of the most barbaric and brutal executions of World War II. 2 priests were crucified by Sommer in the forest next to Buchenwald. These men were from Austria, and they had been locked up in the camp for some time. But inside of the forest, Sommer was known for hanging prisoners in torture ordeals. The forest became known as the Singing Forest, as screams would be heard as prisoners were hanged with their arms behind their backs, and their full weight was placed on their shoulders as they were hoisted into the air. This was excruciating. As they were suspended from the ground, inmates were left for many hours screaming, and they sometimes died from their treatment. But 2 priests were crucified upside down by Sommer inside of the forest, being nailed to trees. One man lasted 34 hours before he succumbed to his death, and the other priest succumbed to his death much earlier than this. For these crimes, Sommer was known as the Hangman, and he was an infamous man who became incredibly feared, and some of the guards also were intimidated by him. He was someone who could take the life of a prisoner without a moment's hesitation. The crimes of Sommer were investigated by the SS, and he was for this actually stripped of his rank within the SS, and was then sent to fight on the Eastern Front against the Soviet Red Army, as part of a punishment battalion of criminals. He sustained bad injuries fighting and lost his right leg and left arm, and was then imprisoned by the Red Army. After his release, he even settled inside of West Germany, found a wife and had a child. He was given, shockingly, a disabled war veteran's pension, but then further accounts of his actions inside of the concentration camp came to light. He was accused of being involved in the murder of 101 concentration camp prisoners, and in 1958 he was convicted of murdering a further 25 prisoners of the camp. Sommer remained for the remaining part of his life locked up in a prison, before he was then moved to a nursing home in his final days, and he died on the 7th of June 1988 at the age of 73. Martin Sommer was one of the most barbaric in the concentration camp of the Second World War, and he was someone who even the SS deemed was too destructive and murderous. He was a man who was intent on carrying out slaughter and death, and there was no limit to his cruelty. Thank you for watching, and to support, please remember to subscribe. And again, thank you so much for watching.